Hi guys, nice to see you. And before the presentation, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Yan Mengjiao, and you can also call me Vicky. I'm taking Master of Arts in English Language Studies in University of Cordillera. And today I'm going to share my presentation on my research. And the topic of my research is now, first of all, let's move to the introduction part. A German linguist has ever said each language contains a unique culture. Uh, in other words, the language is a carrier of a culture. The language can help the people to record and reflect a nation's culture. So, in some way, if you want to save an, the culture of a nation, you should save the language firstly. The foreign countries started to study on the topic related to endangered language or the protection of endangered language since 1970s. And compared with the Western countries, China started to study on this topic a little bit late. But it also have a relatively long history, and the Chinese people's perception of the endangered language has also changed a lot according to the change of time. At the beginning, most people think endangered language is a language which is going to disappear. So there's no any item or criteria for us to access or evaluate which language is endangered or not. And later, some scholars said they give a new definition of the endangered language. Instead, they said the endangered language is a language which is no longer used by the children, and it will disappear within 1 to 2 generations. So, which can help us understand the endangered language easier. And then times move on. Some scholars said we should put the user age as an criterion for the assessment of endangered language. They said that there should be a certain percent of young generation who speak the language. If there's only few young people will speak this language, that means the language is in danger. And until 2001, a Chinese scholar Dai Qingxia has provided a comprehensive and scientific systems for the definition of endangered language. Now let's move to the system. According to Dai Qingxia, the endangered language has the following three features. The first one is that more than 80% of the ethnic group has switched to a second language, which means that at least 80% of the minority group people they do not speak their own language anymore. The second one is that the language of this ethnic group is only spoken by the middle-aged or older people, especially only by the people over the age of 40. So the young generation won't learn and use their own language. The last one is that the native speaker only have the ability to listen to their native language, but do not speak it. That means they can understand the language, but they do not have the ability to use it. So based on this system, we can have a comprehensive understanding of the endangered language, and it can also help us to figure out which kind of language is in danger, right? And about the literature review, based on the materials I have collected, the research is related to endangered language can be divided into two different categories. The first one is the from the macro level. Those uh, papers or dissertation or researchers will focus on the theoretical issues of endangered languages. They mainly focus on how to define the endangered language and what makes the language become endangered, the current situation of this endangered language, and what kind of measures and attitudes should people take to protect the endangered language. And then for the macro level, it more more on the cases studies. Researchers will go to the local areas and get the first-hand information which can help them not only find the social factors which makes a language become endangered, but it can also try to find the factors from the language themselves, from the language construction, from the language characteristics. So the macro level started from a wide way, but the macro level started in a deep way. And the meaning of this study, why I'm interested in this topic and why I choose this topic, that's because I hope after my sharing and presentation, the audience can have a deep understanding of the endangered language and they can realize that they should take some action to protect the endangered language. That's a reason why I choose this topic. And about the statements of the problems, this study will focus on the factors that causes the language become endangered, and specifically, it will answer the following three questions. The first one is, what is the current situation of endangered language in China? The second one is, what are the factors making the language endangered? And the last one is, what are the meanings of protecting the endangered language? Now let's move to the methodology. In this research, I will use a literature analysis. I will collect some materials like some papers, some dissertations, some magazines related to this topic, and I will read and review, then summarize the themes according to my statements of problems, and then give some conclusions, and at last I will display or elaborate my findings. And then let's go to the most important part, the results and the discussion. For the first question, what is the current situation of endangered language in China? According to B. Shi Cheng, 2006, I said that according to the system of Daiqingxia, which we have mentioned before, there are 20 of 120 language in China have been treated as endangered language, and it is estimated that 20% of the language will become endangered in the next 20 and 50 years. Then time moved to the 2060s, according to Li Jingfang. She said that there's 25 language has been used by less than 2,000 people, which can be treated as endangered language. And we have a problem to pass the language to the next generation. That means the intergenerational inheritance has been broken. So we could say from 2006 to 2016, only 10 years, we have 5 more languages have become endangered. So it's so fast, right? And according to Xu Shixuan 2001, he said that for the minority group peoples, they would like to use Mandarin rather than their own language, especially for the young generation. So, based on the statements of those researchers or scholars, We could see that it is clear that the current situation of endangered language in China is not good and is likely to be worse. There will be more language become endangered, and people do not have a good attitude to the endangered language. Then about the second problems, what are the factors making the language endangered? Based on my reviews, I summarized into four aspects. The first one is a policy established. There are few policies mentioned the protection of endangered language, and I have tried to search those laws. Mm, so far, I only found three laws mentioned about the minority language, and the content of laws is about we should protect the right of the minority people to use and develop their own language. But there's no laws mention that the protection of the endangered language, and there's no guidelines for us to implement the protection of endangered language. And then about the financial support. We have a social science foundation in China which is very famous. These institutions only provide 5 projects for the language researchers. So only 5 project group can get the opportunity to get financial support. The others they can't carry on their own project. The insufficient funds makes that a lot of materials will be stocked in the institutions instead of using them. And even some China's scholars and researchers has ever called for the establish of the database for the minority language, but because of the insufficient funds, it has been delayed. During the delayed time, actually, we have lost lots of treasurable resources. Then about the teaching modes. For the minority languages, is often used in the area which is far from city, which is in the mountain area. The education resources there is not enough, so we could not build up a completed educational system, and we do not have enough teachers, and we do not have written materials uh, for the schooling of endangered language. And then the last one is attitude. We could say that most of the minority group peoples do not have a positive attitude to the protection of endangered language. Because with the development of globalization, industrialization, and technology, they would like to go outside of their own city. They want to access the information from the other cities from all over the China or even all over the world. So the Mandarin could help them to access the information easily rather than their own language. So most of the young generation and even the older generation will encourage the young people to learn Mandarin rather than their own language. The last one is what are the meanings of protecting the endangered language? From the cultural aspect, as we said before, each language contains a unique worldview. So different language will percept, understand, and feel the world in different view. So if we could protect the endangered language, we can also protect the language diversity, the cultural diversity. From the linguistics aspects, in China we have lots of kind of language. mm, but only few of those have been developed. We still have a rich resources, and we still have a potential for the linguistic research. And the endangered language is the most treasurable resources for the research. And if we study on the endangered language, we can not only receive the achievements for the linguistic area, we can also find the history, the story behind the language, which can help us to understand the culture as well. And then about the political aspect, why I see that it will helpful for national cohesion. Um, it is mainly about the border minority group like the Tibetan and Mongolia. If the central government or the officials could understand their minority languages, they could understand the thinking and ideas of the people in that areas more clearly, which can help them to make decisions, make political decisions. Those decisions will affecting the national cohesion. And then about the mutual understandings. Yes, we should know the endangered language. So the communication between different nationalities could be processed, right? So we could say the meaning of protecting the endangered languages could be explained from three different aspects. The first one is cultural aspect, the linguistic aspect, and the last one is political aspect. So now let's go to the conclusion. The first one is that the current situation of endangered language in China is not good and is likely to get worse. The second one is that the factors making the language become endangered are including few policies, insufficient funds, uncompleted bilingual teaching mode, and the weak attitude of the minority group people. The last one is that there are lots of meanings to protect the endangered language, as I said before. Then I will give some simple recommendations. First, we should have a right attitude of language protection. We should know that it's not an easy way to conduct the protection of language protections. We have a long way to go. We should always hold a positive attitude to the language protection. Then I hope that the central government or the local government could release more policies or guidelines for people to implement uh, and um, to the practical exercise, so they could take actions to protect the endangered language. Last one is talent training. We hope that there are more institutions could provide financial support to the research group, so we can get some written materials and get some professional teachers as soon as possible. Yeah, that's all of my recommendations. And from my sharing, we could say that the saving endangered language is an urgent task for all the people, all the people around the world. So um, I hope that after my sharing, you could realize how important to protect the endangered language, and I hope that you can take some action to protect the endangered language and love your own um, group, ethnic group language. And that's all of my sharing, and I appreciate if you can provide some uh, comments or suggestions which can help me to improve my research. That's all. Thank you and see you. Bye.